This question is pretty simple. As you know, there are quite a few Democrats now that are calling for the impeachment of President Trump. This includes both elected officials and talking heads. Kevin, I wanted to ask you very plainly, why? Why do they want to impeach him?
Well, I think you have, as you rightly point out in the outset of this segment, Liz, you have Lawrence Tribe, a well-respected constitutional scholar, the professor who taught Ted Cruz and John Roberts, saying quite plainly that the moment that this president assumed the presidency, he was in violation of the Constitution. The Constitution specifically forbids foreign governments, foreign investors from directly providing resources, monetary or otherwise, to elected officials, and that includes the President of the United States. This president has refused to release his tax returns. His lawyers just this past week have said that the Russian government and Russian officials have paid him money in support for his hotels, his golf courses, other things like that. So this is, in that regard, it's pretty unconstitutional the moment he took the oath of office, to say nothing of his firing of Jim Comey last week, just as the investigation into supposed connections to the Russian government was heating up.
Right, and Andrea, let me turn to you, because of course what Kevin is referring to is called the emoluments clause, and he's correct. Constitutionally, it's unconstitutional for a sitting elected official, president, House, representative, or senator, to receive any type of monetary gift or gift that's worth a monetary value while they're holding office, because it can be a conflict of interest. But at the same time, we also allow the opportunity for any American citizen, any naturalized American citizen, to be president. And Trump divested, in a sense. He didn't sell off his things, but he created that distance between himself because he's rich, because he owned property, because foreign individuals have used his property or facilities before. Does that make him just inherently disqualified from being the president?
Well, of course not. And, and let me refresh everybody's memory in terms of the emoluments clause itself. It says no person holding office in the U.S., and that actually goes beyond just the president or the vice president. It actually goes to the Secretary of State. This is also typical hypocritical crap from the Democrats, Liz, because they didn't seem to care that we had an acting Secretary of State who used her position to go around and line the pockets of the Clinton Foundation, as well as her husband's pockets with speaking fees in connection with Russia, by the way. Or how about President Barack Obama, who accepted royalties from books that were purchased by Canadian government employees? This is just a smokescreen. This is what it's like. You know what it is? It's like they're hogging down on a buffet of crazy. I mean, why doesn't Lawrence Tribe just say, you know what, we need an independent chef and an independent waiter to look into this ice cream gate crap? I mean, what else can they throw into this situation?
Right, Kevin, let me ask you this. Let me read you something from Lawrence Tribe's article, because it seems to me that they did perhaps tip over the crazy scale that Andrea is talking about. He writes, to wait for the results of the multiple investigations underway is to risk tying our nation's fate to the whims of an authoritarian leader. Kevin, this man is supposed to be a constitutional law professor, yet he seems to be advocating that we don't wait for any proof, we don't wait for any evidence before we convict the President of the United States of high crimes and misdemeanors and actually impeach him.
Well, impeachment is the trial portion that starts in the House of Representatives, and then they're recommended to go to the Senate if there's proven grounds there. Lawrence Tribe literally wrote the book on constitutional law in the 1970s that's used in every law school classroom. So I've got to give him some credence in terms of what he's talking about in his familiarity with the Constitution in these issues. Again, day one, he's taking money from foreign governments. We know that for a fact. His lawyers confirmed that yesterday. But again, the more troubling thing coming out of last week's firing of Jim Comey is the fact that he readily admitted on TV that that was the reason why he fired the director of the FBI. It is constitutionally his ability to fire that FBI director. But come on. Like, literally, as this investigation is ramping up, as subpoenas are being handed out to Michael Flynn's associates.
Right, Kevin, I know all the Democratic talking points. So. I do. I know all the Democratic talking points, but I think if we want to stick with facts here, if we want to stick with facts and not just with feelings here, I have to ask you very directly, what proof? What proof do we have? What evidence have any of these multiple investigations given us? Not just circumstantial, not just optics that you don't prefer, not just hypocrisy from the left in claiming that firing Jim Comey was a terrible thing for Trump to do, but they would have supported it if it were Hillary Clinton that fired her. What proof do you actually have that Trump colluded with Russia or did anything wrong?
Well, again, that investigation is playing out. We know that there was collusion that took place. We know that Carter Page was involved in that. Subpoenas are being released.
Wait a second.
I think it's a little premature. I think it's premature for Lawrence Tribe to say impeachment right now. We need to let that process and that investigation take place. I totally agree with you, Liz, on that regard, that needs to happen in terms of that taking place. I think we need to demand a special prosecutor for this investigation outside of the chain of command of this White House and the Department of Justice. But again, the constitutional question over the Emoluments Clause is pretty cut and dry. As soon as he put his hand on the Bible and took that oath,
it's not cut and dry.
Foreign money going into his pockets.
No, Kevin, actually, it's not cut and dried. First of all, let's back up to Lawrence Tribe. I don't care what books he wrote. He didn't write the Constitution. And under our Constitution, you were innocent until proven guilty. And the very suggestion that a sitting president should be impeached on absolutely zero evidence whatsoever. And let's even go back even further. Tell me exactly what the probable cause was to even launch an investigation. Why we had a Democrat president supposedly seeking surveillance of an opposition party candidate and his people. And if we're going to talk about subpoenas,
that's not true.
If we're going to talk about
the Department of Justice have said
if we're going to talk about subpoenas, suddenly a subpoena is evidence of guilt, then let's even go back further and talk about Hillary Clinton and all the subpoenas that were leveled against her in which she turned right around and destroyed government evidence. The Democrat Party seems to only care about the Constitution. I mean, how hypocritical to say we've got to preserve the Constitution by trampling it. And as for James Comey, Trump did not go on national TV and say, oops, I lied. I fired him to stop an investigation into the Russian collusion. But my question for you is specifically, what probable cause, I'll let you answer, please. What probable cause was there to launch, to make it okay to launch an investigation for Trump and Russian collusion?
And Kevin, you have the last word here. Go right ahead.
The mountains of evidence are there. I mean, where there's a massive smoke, there's likely fire. And again, these aren't one-off, investigations. The subpoenas were handed down last week. Comey wanted more money for this investigation.
No. I got to correct you there. The spokeswoman for the Department of Justice said that no requests for money or extra resources were made to the Department of Justice from Jim Comey. That was a report. That was an error.
And it wasn't my question.
Well, I mean, that's not what I read in terms of what Comey has said since that firing, that was heating up. He was checking in daily now because it was that phase of the investigation with those investigators. Again, there's a lot of cloud of suspicion on both sides in terms of what's going on. We need that independent investigator to get to the bottom of this situation.
And suspicion and talking points are not evidence. And unless you know something that Senator Feinstein doesn't know, unless you know something that Senator Manchin doesn't know, unless you know something that James Clapper doesn't know, I don't think that there's any proof. And I think it's really inappropriate and unconstitutional for the left to be calling for impeachment when these investigations aren't even finished yet. Andrea, Kevin, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All right.